Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? All right, I think we need a new iteration of economics that advances beyond the obsolete, misleading statistical measurements of bygone eras. And today, we're going to talk about the forgotten history of the 1970s. Now, who here remembers the 70s? Were you born in the 70s or before the 70s? I was born in 76. No, I do not remember the 70s because I was born in 76, so I don't remember the 70s. I remember the 80s and beyond, But let's focus on a largely forgotten history, one within living memory of everyone born in like the 1950s, a historical signal of importance to our understanding of the forces that will dominate the next decade, okay? The 1970s in mainstream history is exaggerated fashions, disco, Watergate, the end of the Vietnam War, the gas crisis, the presidency of Jimmy Carter, stagflation, okay? Now, stagflation, if you're not sure what it is, it's inflation plus stagnant growth, okay? Is once again, it's in the news, and there are numerous articles comparing this to the present, to the 1970s. And what's astonishing is none of these comparisons, at least those that I've seen, even mention the most economical, consequential dynamic of the 1970s. The institutionalization of environmental standards that forced the cleanup of America's pervasive industrial pollution and the re-engineering of the industrial base. Now, in today's money, okay, cleaning up the sources of air, water, soil pollution costs trillions of dollars. An investment that didn't generate profits or productivity as measured in financial terms. And the eventual gains were enormous, but our conventional financial measures of growth, profits, and productivity do not measure improvements in air and water quality or advances in public health due to the sharp reduction in pollution. Now, these costs were not fully accounted or properly attributed to reversing decades of industrial pollution and rebuilding America's aging, obsolete, inefficient, highly polluting industrial base. Instead, the financial burdens of this sustained investment in cleaning up the nation's environment were written off as stagflation. It was a catch-all word that lacks any explanatory insight. Now, the gains were not strictly financial, and so they were not measured. Since they were not measured, both the costs and the gains were overlooked, and then they were forgotten. So it's hard to imagine how poor the air quality and the water quality was by 1970. And the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, was established on December 2nd, 1970. So polluted rivers, they famously caught on fire, and the air quality in cities such as LA were abysmal. So, I don't really think that some of the generations today, like the younger generations today, they have no clue about what really was going on back then. They have no idea, and it's really sad. So getting back, appliances, vehicles, they were terribly inefficient because nobody cared about efficiency when energy was dirt cheap, right? And U.S. factories were a generation behind global competitors such as Germany, Japan, and whose industrial base had been rebuilt to modern standards after being devastated by World War II. So many U.S. plants were drafty, uninsulated, and filled with equipment from a previous era. Now, changing all of this required trillions of dollars of investment and many years, costs which did not generate profits or immediate productivity gains. So it wasn't until the 1980s that the payoff from this stupendous effort became visible and measurable. Although it's been largely forgotten, we're still collecting dividends on the investments made in the stagflationary 1970s. Since we don't measure growth in well-being, the gains from the 1970s were unaccounted for, and these gains in efficiency and quality were also undercounted, if you will. Now, economics as currently configured has no way to measure the benefits in public health and well-being gained by reducing air and water pollution in the 1970s. So these gains were statistically invisible, and even though they were real and consequential. So we are now facing a similar period that demands sustained investments in our industrial base that will not generate profits or productivity gains, reassuring that the essential supply chains that were offshored to boost corporate profits over the past 30 years. And it will be very costly to reshore production and supply chains, a process that will eventually yield tremendous gains, but they will be gains that conventional financial measures will completely miss, and gains in national security, resilience, efficiency, and stability. But conventional economics and pundits have they've overlooked the primary cause of stagflation in the 1970s, and they'll also miss the role of reshoring in the current era of stagflation too. So not only do we manage what we measure, we also only see and understand what we measure. So if it's not measured in conventional terms, it vanishes from the stories that we tell ourselves, like history, right? So reshoring, rebuilding a super efficient industrial base will separate the world's nations into the few, which not just survive but thrive, and the rest decay and they collapse. And clearly we need new iteration of economics that advances beyond the obsolete, misleading statistical measurements of bygone eras, and beyond the equally obsolete obsession with an illusion of financial growth rather than what actually matters: well-being, efficiency, rising productivity by doing more with less. In the industrializing world, the cost of cleaning up industrial pollution have yet to be paid in full, and the cost will be paid either in cash or in diminished public health and higher health expenditures. I hope that all made sense to you. All right, guys, I'm out of here, okay? Because I wanted to, touch on the 1970s, because I remember when we were going through that whole debacle and the crises with the gas, and I remember a lot of people saying to me, this reminds me of the 70s, it reminds me of the 70s. And I said, I really got to talk about the 1970s. I really got to talk about, what happened back then with stagflation and things like that. And that's why I'm talking about it right now. Okay. So I hope this explained to you that we're seeing it all over again. Okay. History is repeating itself. Okay. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fearless. Ciao.